Welcome to the Midwatch, guys. I have got a wonderful field report for you. If you haven't heard it before, I want to say it was 2 episodes ago, episode 7 maybe. Episode 7 maybe, about Vampire Squid, the chick that found the red pill, came in, gave everybody a blast. And they told her to calm down, stop being like a... stop being ornery, and to give her husband a chance to lead. He's going to make some mistakes, but trust it. And it was absolutely amazing to see, because he eventually had come in. He started giving field reports, and you're going to see a great example now of why everybody on Twitter, everybody on YouTube, everybody on Reddit, everybody giving these advice for guys to like man up and stop being a bitch are absolutely clueless about how real relationships run. You are going to see here probably the most nuanced, careful, and thoughtful field report when it comes to correcting a guy on one simple concept. One thing you need to know above all else when using red pill within a relationship, within a marriage, even when you're single. That one thing you need to know is congruence. You need to consistently be the kind of man who achieves the goals that you're trying to achieve and not fly off half-cocked on some random nonsense. You're making us all look bad, so let's get into it. So I got to do a little bit of background. At first, he's going to bring his post to his reaction to his wife finding out about it and flipping out on the internet. And then it's going to be a report about the red wine. And I think that one's the key lesson for guys to learn here. Like, you're going to see why overly literal, inexperienced men have no business talking red pill. And this is going to blow your mind in how much some guys are getting things wrong. So let's begin. His first post, once he finds his wife doing all her things, he says that the vampire squid is his wife. He got pissed that he posted here. He's 36, she's 34. I mean, you've heard this story before. Basically, married himself what he considers a supermodel, and now he's super insecure about it. He talks about his frustration, being pissed off at work and home. He just saw his best friend completely screwed over by his wife, cheated, then divorced. So the ideas kind of resonated with him. He read Rational Male. He read No More Mr. Nice Guy. He read a lot on Ian Ironwood and Red Pill Room. Started lifting, started dressing better, doing the social skills. It's been paying off. And then he talks about how his wife is drop dead gorgeous, career in modeling. And then he decided to end his 180s. So he's still trying to do this for her, trying to prove a lesson that he doesn't need her around for some reason to think that'll be more attractive. Anyways, put that aside, the actual field report from this one, and he thanks everybody for kicking his ass, that sort of thing. He's made some changes. He cut out the active dread because it's clearly not needed. And this is the problem he has now. It's crying over a bottle of red wine. He says it was his friend's birthday, so wife and him got invited over for dinner. The wife got up early to bake a cake. He went to the store, got to pick up what he needed to cook dinner. After he got home, she's unloading the food and pulls out 2 bottles of red wine, gives him an angry glare, starts to say something, but then turns and walks out of the room. He's like, what the hell? Anyways, he finishes unloading, starts cooking. Dinner's going fine. She's slamming cabinet doors and that later on when everybody's getting ready to go to bed. And he's like, all right, here it comes. But he just, keeps a pleasant face, goes gets the kids squared away to watch TV. She doesn't join him, so he goes into the kitchen and he sees her sitting there crying. She cries when she's angry, so he's waiting for her to start going off, and she does. And I'm sure a lot of guys, probably in the mid-pill, get this, where like they have wives at home, and they can tell it's just like one event from the wife having a crying, breaking down temper tantrum. So if this hits close to home, it should, and it's going to be something to take in mind when you see these things happen. So from her side, she's like, you don't think of anybody but yourself. And he goes, sometimes, fogging. Well, I think he's trying to do a muse mastery, but it's not really the place for this one. We'll get into that later, though. You know that Susan can't drink red wine, but since you don't like white, you bought red. I tried not to say anything, but I'm just really pissed because we invited them over and then blah, blah, blah. So she's partially right. Only he likes red wine, but he honestly forgot that Susan's husband basically explodes, or her head explodes if it's even like a little bit of red wine in there. And so he's like, okay, I get it. I made the mistake. I'll remember next time. Come and watch TV. She doesn't want to. He's like, all this over the wine? This is dumb. I'm going to go relax. And so she goes back to crying. She comes in, pure frustration. I can't do this. You want me to be some kind of Stepford wife robot who never disagrees with you, and I can't do it. You make all these changes, and I just assume I'm going to like it. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, all right, whatever. We're arguing about Red Pill now, which we've done before. I was a little disappointed. She read Blue Pill Professor's book on the surrendered wife, and had been getting really sweet and cooperative the last couple of weeks following his lead, but obviously she's having trouble digesting the ideas. So he's pleased with himself because he kept his cool, maintained frame, and then just said, I never wanted a robot. I want to be happy, and I'm doing things that are good for me. I think they'll be good for you too. I gave her a hug, went to watch TV, but she cried more and has been quiet since then. Which he says is an improvement because in the past she would have continued to poke at me. So I don't know what's brewing, but I can almost hear the hamster wheel squeaking when she walks by. Is there any advice to get her back on track? I'm going to put some thoughts in here, and then I'm going to get to the Jack 10 response, because I think he encapsulated it more eloquently than I am. But if you look at this thing, you can clearly tell it's not about the red wine. He is putting himself first. He is becoming his mental point of origin, which, you know, for a guy who's been completely downtrodden his whole life, that's a good way to get self-respect. But the problem is that's not his goal. His goal is just to feel better. You can kind of feel that on there. And you can tell, like, anything that's outside of that just dismisses it, which, to be fair, when we talk about frame, that's exactly what we talk about. Anything outside your frame is amusing, intriguing, or funny. So it would stand to reason, right? If this is the case, the wife is harping on him for something, then that's outside your frame, so treat it as amusing, intriguing, or funny. But it's not, and he doesn't really notice that. He's actually got a problem where he's unable to think outside of his head. And I'm pretty sure Jack will get to this too, but look at it this way. You're in a family, you got the wife, you got the kids. Clearly he's in love with them, loves them all, but he's not treating them as part of his inner circle. So when it's just something simple like that, like to remember that she has a friend, kind of allergic to red wine, don't pick it up, you only got it because you did it. It's that she doesn't feel like she's part of the team. Now, if you're going to do the captain and the first officer thing, either you're with your wife and you want to be, or you're not. Now, in his case, he is, and he wants to be. So doing stuff like this is counterproductive to that goal. And so, in this case, his frame isn't what he thinks he is. She talks about the Stepford wife thing, which, to be fair, that's exactly what's going on here. He wants to do what he wants to do, and he wants her to just shut up and get in line. He doesn't say it that way, but that's how it manifests. If your goal is to be a, self-interested man to that point, fill your boots. It's not my place to say what your goal is or not. Having said that, then, you don't get to get in there and think that red pill tools will make her stop crying, make her stop getting angry. The consequence of picking like a completely 100% self-interested frame is that people surrounding you are probably not going to be in on it. Put that aside now. We're going to get to Jack 10. If you guys don't know, Jack 10 of Hearts, I talked about it earlier on in the episodes. He is an old, married, red-pilled commenter. About the same time in as me. And he used to take these amazingly large, long-winded breakdowns of individual problems here. Not so much for the guy, but for the audience. He's a marketing guy. You kind of like him. Anyways. So, he's got to go ahead and explain what the crying is all about. Because, why else are we here, right? And he says, so there are some men who literally dedicate every fiber of their being to their household and their family, and they still get a shrew, harpy wife who hamsters invented transgressions as excuses to avoid having sex. Those are the men we generally tell to stay the course, ignore the shit tests, invest in themselves, and this is because we know the work they put into their families gives them an inherent authority, and all they have to do is recognize it and ignore the shrieking when the wife realizes that they want to take a couple hours out of each week to go to the gym, hang out with friends, or pursue a hobby. Now, for those numerically minded, we tell the guys they are 0% alpha and 100% beta, so go ahead, alpha the F up. They've earned enough beta that any shit test their wife could give them about being selfish and only thinking about themselves literally has no logical basis. Now, at some point, the equation becomes, 51% alpha, 49 beta, and that's when the shit tests become comfort tests. And that's when you're selfish and you don't even care about this family becomes, I just feel like you never want to spend any time with me, etc. But then there's a variant of the unplugging men here who are man children. Essentially, the proverbial drunk captains. Those guys are Alpha 0 and Beta 0. And these are the men with wives who nag and henpeck them to death because these men can barely muster enough competence to dress themselves every morning and get through their mediocre jobs on time. That's it. It's the extent of contribution to their household value they bring to anybody besides themselves. Otherwise, they come home from work, watch TV, play video games, and then come home grumbling about why their wife is such a nagging shrew who won't have sex with them. Those men, utter failures as captains. So when they perceive their first unplugging steps as do what you want and who cares what she thinks, those men have literally been doing that their whole life. So, this isn't exactly going to inspire tingles in the wife, it's just going to make your wife think, well, he was mostly useless, but at least he does whatever I say. Now he's not even doing that anymore. And he says all this as context because the parent comment is correct. It's not about the red wine. It's about the red wine reflecting an utter deficit of leadership by the op, and a wife being frustrated about how hard it is to act like a diligent first officer when she has completely different and incompetent captain. And for Jack, he says this is what stands out to him. To be honest, there has been a lot less testing and arguing over little things the past couple weeks. I was kind of wondering, who are you and what did you do with my wife? Well, last night I found out. And when she says, do you ever think about anybody but yourself? He goes, yeah, sometimes. And she says, do you know what, Susan? She can't have red wine. You know that speech anyway. And that's how he's parsing it. As in her mind, she sees like a guy she can't rely on. And throughout the entire relationship and marriage, whichever, snapshot it. Op's wife ran the show. She picks the health insurance plan. She makes sure the credit cards are paid. Any social event organized by her. He owns nice clothes because they were purchased by her. He got to do whatever the hell he wanted since the all-time-consuming life maintenance was done by the wife. And that's what marriage to a 0 and 0 alpha beta looks like. So then Op reads some red pill content, goes off half-cocked, with stupidly misguided ideas like, my wife will only respect me when I haphazardly flirt with enough waitresses and cashiers, when he has already got the broad freedom in his life to act completely in his own self-interest. This is not exactly going to lead to a harmonious marriage. Like, we're not talking alpha traits, we're not talking beta traits, they're just negative behaviors, if that makes sense. So our man-child now has gone from alpha 0 and beta 0 to like negative 10. Then she does this part where she talks about her rant about the Stepford wife thing. And so he goes, this kind of man is not going to make any woman agree to surrender, as per the title of the surrendered wife. So his wife, despite her best attempts to follow this red pill woman advice of let him lead and be pleased with the results, isn't seeing that pay dividends. She's willing to defer to him if he gets competent executive leadership out of it, but she's not getting that, and she probably shut her mouth the whole time when his leadership deficit caused her problems, because maybe she was a solipsistic bitch and has way too many X chromosomes to recognize her proud alpha behavior. And then the quote where he's like admits, yeah, he only likes red wine, but he just honestly forgot. And no, the reason this whole thing with the wine broke the camel's back because it involved somebody else. It's not that Op put himself above his wife. I mean, she's been learning to live with that. She could live with the husband who's deliberately considered all his options where he thought, I want Y, my wife wants X, these people want Z, well, I'm going to pick Y. Had Op got in the back of the supermarket and said, I know Susan can't drink red wine, but when we buy white, she only has half a glass, then throws the bottle out anyway. That's why he's picking Y over X and Z. He made an executive decision, he's owning it, and if his wife doesn't like it, then that's her problem. That's one way of doing it. But this guy acts like he's in a universe where X and Y, or X and Z, literally never exist. He's not making decisions in his self-interest deliberately. He's making decisions in his self-interest because he's incapable of even considering anybody else's, which does not exactly make his wife confident as a first officer. So his wife's breakdown could easily be translated as this. How can I trust you to lead and have faith you'll ultimately make decisions in our best interest when you literally act like you can't even comprehend anybody's interests but your own? Because this whole red pill attitude of just start doing whatever the F you want to do and just watch, she'll be pissed and then eventually get hot and bothered for you, sort of assumes that you've been a good blue pill, plow horse, beta male prior. Those guys don't have to worry about comprehending X, like what their wives want, or Z, what their friends want. They think about it constantly. Every step they take, they're worried about the wife. When they're unplugging, they're even acutely aware of the wife to the point of posting here. When they're racked with self-doubt, she lurks in their minds constantly, and it's painfully apparent. And those with especially vicious wives will never miss an opportunity to make them feel terrible for occasionally not picking her. And that preoccupation with this is why it goes without saying that investing in yourself will also pay dividends for your families. It's that wife that compels husbands to come home and deal with the family health insurance plans after going to the gym, which is why any "you only care about yourself" tests are rapidly mitigated because they have no basis. And then they have sex with their wives 4 times that weekend. Alpha 100%, beta 100%. Women like being married and having sex with the alpha bucks. Who knew? And then he kind of brings up the part where the guy said, "I don't want a Stepford wife." And he's like, but here's the thing, man. Based on stupidly misguided sense of the red pill until recently, I doubt any of the actions given any indication of his wife that this is true. Because if the red pill progression is going from being a lazy man-child to being a selfish man-child with more defined abs who continues to demonstrate a complete lack of leadership traits like vision, competency, strength, and empathy, and demonstrates the lack of leadership not just with her, but literally with everybody else, then yeah, she's not going to be happy. I'll put a small pause here. It's just something. It's so interesting. Like when we say it's all about be more attractive and be less unattractive, right? And this is why I say red pill is just a praxeology. It's just tools. Like you'll see that breakdown. That sounds like very standard dating advice, right? Like, why aren't you doing more dishes? Why don't you consider people but yourself? But that's the point. The idea of alphaing up, make yourself more attractive, stop being so codependent, stop placating. Those are compartmentalized tools. For the kind of guy whose wife runs roughshod on him, for the kind of guy who's in his wife's frame, absolutely those things work. That was never this guy's problem, though. If you remember from the last episode, his problem was he had a general insecurity that his wife was more competent, attractive, and had more fun in her life than he ever did. But the one thing he said more than anything was that she had more fun in her youth than I did. But you see there, it was never about she is better than him in the relationship. It's that she got to look out for her own self-interest more than he did. And so how does that manifest? Well, he starts looking out for his own self-interest, but he never had the baseline level of beta behaviors. I keep saying this where people keep thinking of alpha to mean good guy and beta to mean bad guy, but that's not it. Alpha behaviors are attractive behaviors. They're desire. The kind of girl who will jump your bones in the middle of the bathroom at the bar on a Tuesday night. That's from alpha. Beta behaviors are the comfort one. Beta behaviors are why she calls the next morning and wants to spend time with you. Beta behaviors are why a girl asks you, like, where is this going? Beta behaviors are why she's like, I want to have your kids because they would be so attractive. It's like the things that keep a girl around. Now, not making a value judgment here on one being better or worse. What I am saying, though, is this guy is married with a family, and he wants to be married with the family. So by acting in a completely self-interested way and ignoring any semblance of the beta behaviors, Charles Bukowski, Jordan Peterson, Neil Strauss. I like these guys. She wants to be friends and get help moving furniture. He threw out his back and really wanted to smash. Since she offers, wink wink, a potential chance, he sticks around. He's really not living congruent with what his stated goals are. Now, whether he knows he's doing it or he doesn't know, most often I'd say guys don't know what they're doing, he ends up in this situation where he's actively working against his own goals. His goal in this case, stated before, was he wanted to be the captain of his household. And his wife did what they suggest in that book, The Surrendered Wife, congruence tests. You want the reins? Go get them. You got it, Tiger. And sure enough, he did. And I know this wasn't the first example. There's probably a bunch of other examples where it's just her and him and he does some selfish thing. And granted, if he had his act together 100% of the time or most of the time, she probably could have, whatever, that happens. You're not always the best guy, like I get it. But when you come from a position where you have no ability to look after the other person's best interest you're sharing your life with, then yeah, you're probably going to have an uphill battle. Now, if you want to keep the wife around, adding enough beta is a good thing. If you don't want to keep her around, don't. But Jack follows it up again, and this part I actually really enjoy. He has the op has this moment of self-reflection. I just wish she would realize I want things to be good. I'm not trying to hurt her. And Jack's like, when you say things will be good for her too, you probably need to extend your thinking beyond, well, I'll be a better looking guy, therefore I'll be a high value male, therefore that's good for her in and of itself. But it's not exactly false in isolation, but it should be far from the totality of your thinking. You sort of have to drop your Chad Thundercock pretenses here, because you're not even acting like Chad Thundercock, but more like his second-rate cousin, Chadwick Thunderlips Jr. Look, here's where you got your lines mixed up. Red Pill is one of the few sources of, he says truth, but I'm saying utility here. And that is to tell you, against a ton of messages in a society, that the more you invest in a woman at the expense of yourself, the less attracted to you she'll be, and the traits we consider synonymous with personal virtue are mostly uncorrelated to those we consider sexually attractive, and that's it. That's basically the list. Unfortunately, the main sub has turned into an echo chamber that loves discussing this by using proof by contrapositive logic, which then gets distilled into, the less you give a shit about women, the more attractive to you they'll be, and acting with any personal virtue or kindness just makes you more sexually unattractive, or they would say a cuck. And then is filled with field reports of stories about how a little shit some guy gave about a girl and how much that guy fucked her later that night. These contrapositive definitions are true if you want to have sex with anxiety-ridden girls who mask their low self-esteem with a narcissistic personality and no father figure to provide a source of what positive male attention looks like. I know this because I spent most of my early 30s after getting divorced and learning about pickup 10 years ago by doing exactly this. So I'm very familiar with the women that respond to a pure Chad Thundercock approaching, or in his case, Chadwick Thunderlipping. But I know my wife isn't one of them, and I doubt yours is either. I want to put a pause in here because this is sounds very similar to that feminist line, if you only want to sleep with anxiety chicks. It's not that you're only seeking damaged women. So I know there's nuance to this, and I kind of want to impart it to you guys as best I can. Women are women. They're not broken and damaged, and they're not some that are put together. Women go through all the experiences. You can put the most well put together woman and she can just cry on a random day because she feels like it. That same woman can get her act together and fly to the moon with some mathematics and some fancy physics. But that's the point. In that cycle, in that lifetime cycle, girls are going to go through all kinds of phases. And when a girl has more neuroticism, she tends to respond better to more of that Chad Thundercock, that alpha behavior, that desire, being aloof, the dark triad stuff, exactly. Because, if you're scared and neurotic, somebody who's cocksure about himself is seen as attractive. If you want to take it back to caveman and cave Stacy days, it's because, girls have fight or flight response. What's the first thing you want to do? You want to get rid of it. So what do? You find a guy who can beat that tiger up who's coming after you. Naturally, the girls, when they were in danger, who found these guys attractive, kept reproducing, and they eventually outbred the chicks who had a level head all the time because they kept getting eaten by tigers before they could have a cave family. You move that to the modern day, and you have this weird, again, I call it sexual diabetes. It's where our instincts are no longer useful for us. Where, for sexual desire, that anxiety response is still there. And when a girl is in, I think Rollo calls it the hoe phase. That chart he has where he talks about girls when they hit the epiphany phase, they hit the wall, they start the families, they have a resurgence. If I can remember to do that, I'll put a link in the description to the article so you can see what I'm talking about. Pause it here and then come back to it. But that's the point. When girls are in that early phase, that hoe phase, they got no problems. It's lots of anxiety, a lot of neuroticism, a lot of drama. I mean, you see it on, what's that, the Fresh and Fit podcast all the time. They bring in a bunch of drunk 23-year-olds who talk about this stuff, and they have like emotional moments, and the guys are like, man, why aren't these chicks loyal? It's like, dude, she's not at that phase in the life. Like, if you're looking for loyalty out of a girl who's got tons of options at 23, I don't know what to tell you. But his wife's not 23. She's right in the middle of the epiphany phase here. It's like from, was it 28 to 40? She's 34. So right now, in a girl's mind, she's starting a family. She wants stability. That's where she's at. And that's kind of what started all this problem, because the guy has an unrealistic representation about the female reproductive life cycle. In this case, she had her fun in her 20s. Now she's in her 30s. She wants to settle down, have a family. And then in her 40s, she's going to resurge again and start doing like Ho Phase 2 Electric Boogaloo. Sucks for him because he basically got her at the start of the epiphany phase. He never got the fun times, and now he's kind of resentful for it. Now, generally speaking, as a preventative measure, what you should be doing is not settling down until you're well past this. You've got enough of it out of your system that you actually align your goals more so with the girl who hits that epiphany phase. I mean, you're going to want to date her younger, so you enjoy the last bit of her I wasted my 20s, get the fun out of the system, make sure you guys are a good fit, there's no weirdness to it, all that stuff. But when you're caught in the middle there, in a bad situation, and I only mean bad from his perspective here, what do you do? Well, in this case, understand the attractive triggers here, and it should be a good thing for him. Like, for a girl in that phase in life, she doesn't need hardcore, avoidant or anxious or neurotic type game, not direct triad stuff. Like, a very little will go a long way. Now, how much he needs? Well, that's what his job is. Test things, try things out, see how much is too much, see how much is not enough. How much do you need to get the point across and get the kind of life you desire, right? Understand, though, too, that her mind is constantly thinking about the beta stuff. And if you want to have a family, you kind of signed on for it. So, calibration, which he absolutely does not do. And I want to say, we haven't named it yet, but back when this was done about 5 years ago, another guy did this called Steve McQueen. We got some awesome pen names, I know. And we started calling it going Rambo. And a lot of guys think Rambo just means like, doing the red pill stuff and the tool's too hard, but it's not. What it is a guy who's not paying attention to the effect that his actions have. If you think about it like an OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act. The idea being, if you keep cycling through this, applying red pill tools, calibrating them effectively, then you're going to get to a place where you're making forward progress. But in his case, he's not observing and he's not orienting. He's just deciding and acting. And by missing half of the things out, he has no idea the effect that his actions are having on those around him, which is why a girl having a temper tantrum, slamming doors, and crying over red wine doesn't really help him. But I mean, he means well. He's trying. He's not there yet. So whatever. I'll continue on now, though, with Jack's approach. So he goes, let me give you a healthier viewpoint. So it's true that if your captaincy revolves around making your first officer happy at all costs, then she's not going to fuck you and probably eventually jump ship and divorce your ass. But that does not mean your optimal captain strategy is not to give a shit about her either. You should absolutely prioritize yourself over her, but it will be much more well received if it's a conscious, deliberate choice. When you pick yourself over her because you even failed to acknowledge she exists, well, that's what's going to be upsetting. Because your wife will be most attractive to a strong captain, and strong captains often put their needs above the crew because without a strong captain, the whole ship is fucked. Strong captains don't feel guilty about this because they know they contribute 1,000 different ways to running the ship that nobody else can, that they put in the work, and from that work comes authority. And that authority is quickly respected when the crew realizes that the authority has everybody's best long-term interests in mind. Now, things will be good with your wife when she realizes this, and she will realize this when you've demonstrated it consistently. A consistent record of strong captaincy. Now, given you thought the red pill was all about hitting on waitresses in front of her to make her jealous until like 4 days ago, I doubt you've thought about much this, and I would suggest you get started. So some final thoughts on this one, and it's hard to discuss, and look, I'm going to be honest with you guys, this is the whole reason I'm in this space. I could be just doing professional Minecraft videos right now, and I'd be perfectly happy doing it. But When you get these situations, you're going to see a ton of guys on Twitter. You're going to see a ton of guys on Reddit, on YouTube, telling you how to be more alpha, how to win your wife back, how to teach that bitch a lesson. And I'm sure you've seen it. Like I said, I've already kind of badmouthed them once, but it's entertainment. I get it. But like the fresh and fit thing, guys have this need to like treat their girl as their arch nemesis, and they got a scoreboard, and she's been running up the board for the first quarter. Now the second quarter comes, and it's your turn to do it, and you're going to teach that bitch a lesson, and you're the man. And then they misinterpret a lot of what guys say when they start acting more self-interested. I'm like, yeah, that'll do it. And then she'll surrender to me like a Lord of the Rings. You drop the ring into Mordor, and it's not what's happened here. And it's not what's trying to happen. And there's just too many guys with too little experience drowning out the guys who know what they're doing because they've done it before and they've wrote down how they did it. And it's all there. And as long as you're patient and as long as you follow the right people and you listen and you try things yourself, you're able to avoid situations like this. Like, I would hate it if one of you guys listening to this ended up in a situation where your wife is crying and mumbling on the kitchen floor over a bottle of red wine because, well, Ryan said to treat yourself like your mental point of origin. And so I told her, and I'm like, he's really not getting it. It's about congruence and consistency. If you want to be the head of your household, you got to act like it. Now that means you're going to have a lot of self-interest in it, because if you're not happy, happy wife, happy life, flip that on its head. A happy captain makes a happy ship. Do the things that you need to do to make yourself happy over the long term. At the same time, you've made a decision that, in this case, your wife or a girlfriend or your kids, whatever you decide to bring in your home, that was a conscious decision to add their self-interest to your own. Now, to what extent, that's for you to decide. But just realize they're thinking, breathing humans too. And if you skew it too heavy on I'm going to get mine and you sort yourself out, then don't be surprised if they do exactly that. And the reason why most guys say married red pill is red pill on hard mode is this. You have to put aside your ego on these things, and you have to make conscious decisions. You have to be deliberate about it. Yeah, this is just some goofy red wine one, but like Jack was saying, if you went to the store, realizes that, and you know why you brought home the red wine, knowing that her friend gets headaches from it, well, that's something I can live with. He made a choice, it disagreed with mine, but it's a strong choice. She'll give some pushback, she'll fight about it, sure, but she won't end up drifting off and then thinking about a divorce, because I'll tell you right now, he was sitting here with like, oh, here we go again, and she's getting angry at me. I will say this, though. When she's angry, she's still invested. The problem here is that she's not getting angry anymore. And that's where you gotta watch out. Because, again, it's goofy pickup artist telling you this, but it's true as sin. The opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. And if you start noticing that your rational self-interest, if your mental point of origin starts to be met with apathy and not anger, then my friend, it's probably good to go take a look back through your life and see what you're missing. Because I guarantee you've completely shed, whether or not you've added beta characteristics to your life or not, you've shed the beta characteristics that allow people to actually want to be in your family. Now, take it for what it's worth. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed yourselves on this one. It's a bit of a somber one, but I love it. In fact, I probably want to do some follow-up stuff on this one, because this is probably maybe one of 2 field reports that I can recall. There was this one, and there was CPing. He's the guy whose wife had like a temper tantrum on here, and the whole internet got mad at him for a minute. But you see very few opportunities to see field reports from the red pill from both the husband and the wife's perspective. And yeah, this thing really deserves a higher deep dive, but I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I will catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.